Kolsch cathedrals and one of the world's best carnival celebrations. For many Americans, it's perfume for men. But I was here to watch soccer and take a bike ride. It's the Greenway with Mac, and I'm going to take you around the stunning city of Cologne, Germany, starting at its medieval cathedral and main train station. Whether arriving by high-speed train or S-Bahn, what an incredible way to be greeted. The Gothic cathedral is 500 feet tall, making it the third tallest church of any kind on the planet. They started building it in 1248, but it was not finished for over 600 years, finally opening in 1880. Residents even referred to the church as the Eternal Construction Site. 6 million visitors come through every year, which makes it Germany's most visited site. Amazingly, despite being hit by bombs 14 times during World War II, the twin spires survived, and the cathedral was fully restored within 10 years. The rest of the city was severely destroyed by Allied bombing. The region of Cologne is divided into 9 boroughs, and we are staying entirely in the central region that encompasses downtown, called Innenstadt. This journey through Cologne starts by heading to the banks of the Rhine River, then moves to its older historic sections, followed by a stop at the Deutzer bridge. Then we will head out to the Greenbelt, pass through a medieval gate, and return on the other side of the central station. Tag along with me as I show you around the city center and share a few stories about its history. Locally, Cologne gets a bad name for its bike infrastructure, but as an American, I think it would be one of our best cities. There is a wide variety of infrastructure that you'll see on this trip, from off-street multi-use paths to bike lanes in the street with no protection but paint. The central station, called a Hauptbahnhof in German, is an unbelievable hub of activity that you'll find in most big German cities. There's actually another one right across the river, just on the other side of this bridge, and between the two, you can access an enviable number of destinations across the region via train. There are an estimated 1,200 trains that come and go each day through the Cologne hub. Here are some of the travel times on the ICE trains, which include a 200-mile trip to Paris and 160 minutes to Amsterdam. So whether you're looking to pivot to a new country on your trip or dip your toe into Germany, this location in Western Germany makes it convenient. Cologne straddles the Rhine River, which originates in the Swiss Alps and flows north through Germany, France, and the Netherlands, where it drains into the North Sea. I filmed a second ride that hugs the river and crosses 2 of these bridges, so be sure to click on that video next, or click this card if you can't wait. Take a right here to a switchback-style ramp that leads up to the bridge path. This open space along the waterfront is called the Rheingarten. The green space is close to cafes and is a delightful spot to watch boats pass by and trains cross the bridge. And all of this is possible because in the 1980s, they buried 6 lanes of car traffic below us, reclaiming the space for people. While not the cheapest way of dealing with the negative impacts from cars, the 2,000-foot tunnels are effective at continuing the flow of traffic while providing peaceful space along the water. And the reason they've chosen to do it here is that 2 of Cologne's main plazas are located nearby, so visitors and locals can stroll down to the Rhine without crossing a major road. The taller building reaching for the sky is called An Gross St. Martin, which is a Romanesque church that is built upon a Roman chapel, which you can tour. The name means Great St. Martin Church, and it was completed in 1150. The church has 3 apses on this end that kind of look like a 3-leaf clover from above. It was damaged during World War II and fully restored in 1985. Take a left on this path that parallels the buildings. The area we are currently in is also called the Frankenwerft. And before I start naming too many places, I do want to apologize for my German pronunciation. I speak Spanish fluently, so those videos in Spain are easy, but these German words are tough. Next, we will pop into the old city to check out the streets, architecture, and plazas. This little street is called Schildergasse, which means Salt Alley. This is a quiet street now, but was one of the liveliest areas late at night. We spent an evening here at Taberna Flamenca, which if you like crowds and low ceilings and hot stinky people, then you'll love it here. The Euro place across the street is perfectly located for a late night snack as well. This plaza is pronounced Heumarkt and translates to Haymarket. This was the location of Cologne's Fan Fest during the Eurocup soccer tournament, which is why we were in town. Across the plaza is the Kölner Rathaus, or City Hall, that was built in the 12th century and is the oldest city hall in Germany still in use. The style is medieval with a Renaissance-style loggia and tower that were added in the 15th century. The plaza is lively at this time of the year, but is also known for having a fantastic Christmas market. These markets are all over Germany and become filled with people who are getting into the Christmas spirit, enjoying the seasonal sights, sounds, smells, and tastes. They even have a really unique facility for ice skating, much different than the typical rink. The next stop is Deutzer Brücke, which spans the Rhine and connects to the Deutz neighborhood. From what I can tell, each of the bridges that cross the river for several miles in each direction are accessible by bike. This is a fantastic bridge because the views are really incredible. Any bike journey exploring the city should include several of these bridges to access a variety of perspectives. In the foreground are river cruise ships, which are common on this river and the Danube in Europe. While you can explore Europe by train and hotel, I also think that unpacking your bags once and combining your hotel and transportation is a sweet way to explore Europe. Our sponsor, MacMillan Travel Design, is a river cruise specialist and can help you plan one of these enriching journeys. Next, we're going to ride along this road for about 1.5 miles out to one of Cologne's greenbelts. These greenbelts are a big reason that 1/4 of Cologne's land is public green space. In the United States, this percentage would rank it in the top 10 cities. The road next to us is a main thoroughfare, and we will have a variety of bike lanes alongside it. We could definitely use a little protection here, as this car starts getting a little too cozy with our lane. The city of Cologne was largely rebuilt following World War II. The Allies dropped nearly 50,000 tons of bombs, which destroyed 61% of its built-up area, but especially the Innenstadt, or central area. 262 air raids were responsible for 20,000 civilian casualties. America's First Army took Cologne in March of 1945, and nearly 95% of the population was displaced to more rural areas. But by the end of that year, following the war's conclusion, Cologne's population largely returned to pre-war levels. But missing were the 11,000 Jewish people who were either deported, fled, or killed by the Nazis. All 5 of Cologne's synagogues were destroyed, and only the Runstrasse synagogue, located just southwest of where we are, was restored in 1959. As was the case with many European cities following the war, they were rebuilt around the automobile. Whereas in the United States, many cities committed a self-own by tearing down buildings for wider roads, places like Cologne pretty much started from scratch. Roads like this one next to us are a good example of the type of car infrastructure that was built. Another of the big roads is the North-South Drive, called Nord-Süd-Fahrt in German, which we are passing over right now. Parallel to us on our right is Schildergasse, which is a pedestrianized street that was Europe's busiest shopping street in 2008. 13,000 people come through this quarter-mile-long stretch of street per hour. Many businesses cry foul when cars get less access to businesses, but the fact that this is the busiest shopping center, which happens to be pedestrianized, is not a coincidence. In city centers, cars are bad for business. The plaza surrounded by cars is called Neumarkt, or in English, New Market. Carnival started taking place here in 1823. They occasionally hold other events here, but in recent years it has appeared neglected. When you look at it on a map, you see that it's an island surrounded by at least 3 car lanes, so it's no surprise that the area isn't activated with people the same way that the plazas near the water are. It's more challenging to get here, and the car noise just makes this location much less enjoyable. To the right is a more traditional 20th century mall. That neat-looking church straight ahead is the Basilica of St. Apostles and is also considered Romanesque style. Characteristics of Romanesque style are semicircular arches used for windows, doors, arcades, and supports for the nave. The style was common in the 11th and 12th centuries. This contrasts with the Gothic-style churches, which are known for being tall with pointed spires. Stained glass is also a common feature of those. There are 12 Romanesque churches in Cologne, all but one of which were damaged in the Second World War. St. Maria Liskirchen is just a little further south of us near the Rhine and was the only one spared. Restoration continued on the 11 damaged churches until the 1990s. This next section is a good example of repurposing space for a bike lane without spending lots of money. It's not pretty, but it clearly divides the limited space to keep each mode of travel separate. The name Cologne for most of my life was a men's perfume and not a city. But the name comes from eau de Cologne, which is French for cologne water, and was a perfume created by an Italian named Johann Maria Farina in the early 1700s. The term cologne actually refers to perfume oils of about 2 to 4% and contain oils often from citrus fruits. Farina's shop opened in 1709, just a few blocks over to our right, and is the world's oldest fragrance factory. The Romans founded the city of Cologne in the year 50 AD. Shortly after, they built their first protective wall, which lasted until the 900s, when it needed to be expanded for growth. In the 12th and 13th centuries, they constructed the 23-foot-tall wall that would be its final iteration. In the late 1880s, they removed most of the wall to make way for a ringed boulevard, but many of the gates and towers were kept. One of those that remains is the Hahnentor, which was the western gate and is considered to be the most important. Dozens of kings were crowned about 50 miles to the west in the Aachen Cathedral and would arrive through this gate on their way to the Cologne Cathedral. The gate was also damaged during World War II and has been used as a prison, museum, and an exposition hall. Since 1988, it has hosted a carnival society. The Cologne Carnival is one of the largest street festivals in Europe. Locally, the carnival season officially starts on 11/11 at 11/11, but the crazy days begin with the street carnival, which starts the Thursday before Ash Wednesday. Some of the hot spots for the events are Zulpicherstrasse and its surroundings, Neumarkt Square, and Heumarkt. The bars and pubs in the city get crowded with people in costumes, dancing and drinking in the streets. Hundreds of thousands of visitors flock to Cologne during this time, which is part of what has fueled the rivalry between Cologne and Dusseldorf, as Dusseldorf was intent on keeping its residents local to support their own economy during this busy season. Generally, around 1 million people celebrate in the streets on the Thursday before Ash Wednesday. About that rivalry between Cologne and Dusseldorf, I'm only going based on what I've read and watched, but it likely goes back to actual battles nearly 1,000 years ago. Both cities have vied for economic and cultural dominance in the region. Anthony Bourdain briefly covered the topic when he was visiting the area on episode 7 of season 7 of his show Parts Unknown. The important thing to know is that you drink Kolsch in Cologne and Altbier in Dusseldorf. The neighborhood to our right is the Belgian Quarter, one of Cologne's priciest. Here you can find a variety of boutiques, galleries, pubs, and restaurants. The streets are relatively thin and mostly one-way, so they seem to function as cycle routes. There are a lot of bikes locked up near the sidewalks, so it does seem that people feel safe riding in the neighborhood. Following the First World War, the British Army of the Rhine occupied Cologne, and they managed the demilitarization of the Rhineland. Part of this process was to dismantle the city's fortifications, which had been kept clear for artillery. The fortifications were converted to open park space in the form of two greenbelts, called Grüngürtel. The greenbelts are referred to as the inner and outer greenbelts, and we are going north on the inner greenbelt. The length of the inner greenbelt is about 4.5 miles, from Luxemburger Street near the Cologne Sud station up to the banks of the Rhine at the Zoo Bridge. I didn't have time to see the outer greenbelt, but it nearly circles the city and occupies the area that was used as fortifications until the early 1900s. There was resistance from the agricultural sector, but in the 1920s the plan was approved for the open space. There is a free app called My Greenbelt Trail that you can download to help you explore the area, and it includes maps and extra information that is found on these landmark posts. The Greenbelt is mostly open green space, and there are amenities like dog parks, playgrounds, splash pads, and basketball courts. There are several paths that cut through the park, with one exception at this bottleneck about 1.5 miles ahead. There is a bike path that parallels the car road that you'll need to use to connect the two main green spaces. We will be turning back into the city before that section, so you won't see it in this video. While we went north here, there are some notable points of interest that are just to the south. The Museum for East Asian Arts and Hiroshima-Nagasaki Park are just on the other side of Aachener Strasse. The museum opened in 1913 and holds artifacts from Japan, Korea, and China, and is the largest museum of its kind in Germany. Hiroshima-Nagasaki Park is named for the two cities in Japan that were devastated by nuclear bombs in 1945. The park itself was constructed on top of rubble from World War II. Nearby is a large pond, and many reviewers online see that this is a large, open, and calm place away from the busyness of the city center. There is a beer garden and restrooms in the park as well. If you continue just a little further south from there, you will arrive at the University of Cologne. The university was originally established in 1388 as the fourth university in the Holy Roman Empire. The original location was near the Rhine and is the current location of the Cologne University of Applied Sciences. This location in the Greenbelt was established in 1934 in the borough of Lindenthal. To our right is the eastern edge of the Greenbelt, which is bordered by train tracks. The Cologne West train station provides non-car access to the park. The neighborhood bordering us to our left is Ehrenfeld. While I did not make it over there on my trip, what I read was that this is a fun, multicultural neighborhood with Turkish bakeries, upcycled design stores, and murals. At night, the area comes alive with bars and clubs. The Cologne Central Mosque is a shell-shaped building that complements Colonius Tower. They also have their own train station called Köln Ehrenfeld, which appears very well served by trains, including S-Bahn and ICE. The neighborhood streets looked small and probably alright for confident bike riders, but I did not see anything that is physically separated for kids or other vulnerable users. In most German cities, you will see these telecommunications towers, and this one is called Colonius. This one is 870 feet tall, and you used to be able to go up to a viewing platform and restaurant, but they have been closed since 1992. The towers are otherwise still in use, often for television and internet service, as Germany did not adopt cable and satellite technology at the same rate as other places. The one in Berlin was decorated as a soccer ball when I was there in 2006. If I could go back and redo this ride, I would go just a little bit further in the Greenbelt. It wasn't until I was cutting this video together that I saw a bike bridge that crosses the train tracks and runs to Media Park, which would have added to the off-street mileage of the trip. Media Park looks like a large commercial area with hotels, large retail stores, a movie theater, restaurants, and some park space by a lagoon. If you would like to try that section, then you'll cross the street over to the left and cross the bridge after about 200 meters. I made a right at this street and stayed on the separated bike path. We will get back into the city center by crossing under these rail bridges, which are used by the Cologne Stadtbahn. The Cologne Stadtbahn is a light rail system that serves Cologne and a number of neighboring cities. The network basically surrounds the city center and expands in all directions. The headways are good enough that you don't need to check train schedules, which is such a novelty for someone coming from the US. We rode it a few times, including out to the soccer stadium, and it was great. This next section of the journey brings us back initially towards the city center. The comfortable, protected, and off-street paths are now gone, and instead we are in painted bike lanes. Right away we see that no matter what country you're in, paint is ineffective at keeping cars out of the bike lane. It's not ideal, and probably not good for novice riders, but you might be able to find a mostly off-street ride if you stay in the Greenbelt and wiggle your way in an arc shape towards the Rhine. We have an idea of what that would be like from our couple of miles earlier, so I thought I would show you something different by riding in what is called the Kölner Ringe, or in English, the Cologne Ring. You can tell that you are here because the intersection is wide and filled with trees. This is actually the city's busiest and most prominent street system, and all along it are underground rail lines, currently lines 12 and 15. The Christophstrasse Media Park station is right here. The Cologne Ring is located in the footprint of the medieval city wall and stretches for about 3.5 miles. The busier sections are in the other direction, like the Hohenzollern Ring, which is Cologne's main entertainment district. There you will find the usual cafes and restaurants, but also movie theaters, discotheques, and nightclubs. The stretch that I am taking you on is called Hansaring. The name comes from Cologne's time as a Hanseatic city from the 13th to 17th centuries. Hanseatic cities were ones that formed a commercial and defensive network across Central and Northern Europe. Generally, the network was there to create safe commerce between city-states. The name is also used for this plaza called Hansaplatz, which is a state park. The park has a couple of soccer pitches, and on the opposite side is part of the city wall and one of its towers, which you can see if you look past the trees. At the bridge is the Hansaring S-Bahn station. If you are not familiar with the German train system, the U-Bahn is like the underground metro systems, while the S-Bahn is more like a regional commuter rail. This S-Bahn station has 4 lines that run through it and take you to the suburban areas in all directions from here. I flew into the region via the Düsseldorf airport and took the S-Bahn to arrive at the train station where we started this video. Earlier I mentioned the rivalry between Düsseldorf and Cologne, and really what matters to me is which one is best for biking. Both cities have some terrific places to ride a bike in parks and along the river, but both also left a little to be desired on their roads. And while Cologne was almost universally panned online for being a bad bike city, there are multiple sites that rank Düsseldorf as a top 25 city in Europe. I was in Düsseldorf for a game and took this video of the bike lanes, which looked great. This is just north of the Rhine Promenade, where they buried about a mile of car road and covered it with a park. What do you think? Comment below and tell me which is the better bike city. All I know is that I'd like to spend a lot more time in both places. And we could have continued slightly to the right to get where we are going, but my philosophy is that you should not pass up an opportunity to ride through a medieval gate. This one is called Egelstein-Torburg, and it gets its name from this street, Egelstein. This is one of 3 towers still standing from the medieval wall, and the second one we have seen on today's ride. The last one is south of us and is called Severinstorburg. This street was really close to where we stayed, so we spent a lot of time on it. There were always a ton of people walking and biking, and while not completely car-free, driving on the street was very limited. The vibe was relaxed, and there were plenty of places to eat, drink, and shop. We have seen this type of street treatment in videos from Valencia, Spain. The sidewalk is not raised above the street, but instead, everyone is on the same level. Instead of an asphalt road, there are bricks that indicate to the driver that they are on a special street. They also create noise when they are driven over, so those who are outside of the vehicle are alert to someone driving on the street. As a result, data shows that drivers are more alert and drive slower, which results in safer streets. The final destination of the ride is the bike shop where I rented the bike that I used in this video. The shop is located at the train station, hidden in a little corner. My experience was really good, as it was convenient to rent the bike here and the price was reasonable. The deposit needs to be in cash, so you'll need to have some euros to rent a bike. I like to record these videos with e-bikes, and they were able to accommodate me. The price was under 10 euros for 3 hours. We are now on the opposite side of the train station from the start of the video. Lots of buses connect on this side, and this train on the near side tracks is in S-Bahn. Many German cities are improving their bike networks, and many have greenways that connect the more rural parts. I looked at some of the other top biking cities in Germany, and Bremen, Münster, and Hanover scored pretty high. All three of those cities are north of Cologne, and about the same distance from Holland, so maybe there's some sort of correlation. We squeezed in a few days in Nuremberg on this trip, and down the road I'll have some things to share from that city. Take a second to subscribe so that you don't miss that series of videos. And while you're at it, click the like button for this one to improve the chances that other riders will find it. One last thing before the bike shop is the Musical Dome. This venue was built in 1996 and was intended to be temporary. After a rough start and a change in ownership, the venue was mainly used for the opera and musicals. In 2022, they completed a €21 million renovation in the style of a Parisian nightclub, and they have been putting on the musical Moulin Rouge. And here's the bike shop that I highly recommend. Don't forget the cash euros for the deposit. Have a great ride. I'll see you on the next city tour.